become a good communicator, it is not only about speaking, it is more about listening, and we will see why. Hello, friends, and welcome to this new episode of Chems Makes Podcasts. If you're new here, my name is Chems, and I make interesting podcasts and share them. You can find them on all the podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Basically, I'm a CS student, and I just like interviewing people and sharing some good thoughts and ideas here. And if you're not new, I'm real sorry. I know it makes like more than 10 days I did not post or I did not publish any podcast. For one reason, because I've been a little bit busy with the school project, but now I'm done. But like I took some days off, I've been a little bit tired, and I am back with some really good content, with some interesting interviews that I've recorded, and I will be sharing them on this podcast. Alright, so today we'll be talking about the art of listening, how to make it a valuable communication key skill. We will break this podcast into 3 parts, starting with the definition as always, and then some experiences, and let's say the effects of a good listening experience. And at last but not least, how to become a good listener. Of course, at the end I'm going to give you a checklist or some tips that I personally use and some tips that I found on the internet about the good listening experience. Anyway, 3, 2, 1, let's start. Well, the first point we need to make here is to differ between to listen, the verb to listen, and the verb to hear. Because a lot of people confuse between 2 verbs. So according to Google, listening is to give one's attention to a sound. So you see here, the keyword here is attention. And the verb to hear is perceive with the ear the sound made by someone or something. So there are some keywords here with the verb to hear. There is the ear, which means it's an activity of the ear, and the sound made by someone or something. That means like, it's not about attention. Hearing is the physical part of the thing. It's when you just receive the sound waves and your ear perceives them. That's it. But when we talk about listening, we are more of attention. And attention is not an ear activity. Attention is a brain activity. That is the main difference. I hope you just got it. And this is the definition. We see I just want to talk about this thing that popped into my head. We see a lot of people caring about speaking and ignoring listening, which is a mistake. I don't know, maybe because like when we were kids, the most important thing that our parents cared about is when we speak, and they did not realize that just listening is a great thing, and speaking cannot happen without listening. That's the ironic part of it. So they just care. Oh, he starts speaking. He starts saying ma, ba, ba. That's the most thing that they care about. But we should really boost in our children the ability of a good listening experience, and not just making it a passive activity as a lot of people think. It's a really active activity that we should all take into consideration when we educate the coming generations. Right now I'm going to talk about the effects and giving some examples about the good and effective listening. So the first thing a good listening experience offers is building relationships. So attentive listening can help your workforce, and when we say workforce, I mean the employers, the employees, and your team. It helps them to come closer together, and as communications improve among employees, the teamwork will also increase and improve and be improved, and that can lead to more productivity in business. So the second thing, it encourages learning. So the basic thing that you can do while learning is just listening. So as you know, when you go to school and attend lectures, by the way, the word lecture means reading out loud. So when the professor, the teacher, or the lecturer is reading out loud or giving you a lesson, you're listening to that, and you're understanding and you're learning. So the basic activity to learn is to listen. So it's more about finding what the speaker thinks and believes about something, and it also happens in business. So when employees listen to one another, they learn from one another, and a free flow of ideas that are truly listened to can lead to a workplace where employees are constantly learning from each other. And it's really interesting to see if employees, if someone has an experience of 1 year and another one has a 2 months experience, they can complete each other. Someone maybe knows better theory, the other one knows better practice, and they can help each other. And third thing, it encourages respect, and this is a a good thing, because respect is more of the platform of any sort of communication. The fourth thing that you can get from a attentive listening is a culture of communication. And this is really important for a lot of companies. I've read on a book called Discover the Leader in You, made by the Dale Carnegie Foundation. For those who don't know who is Dale Carnegie, he's one of the communication gurus and the worldwide known coaches and instructors. He, in one of the chapters in his book, is fully dedicated to listening. And I've read and I've learned a lot of things, a lot of facts that are on this podcast are based on that book. I really recommend you to read at least that chapter. So by fostering, or let's say encouraging attentive listening, you establish a company culture in which employees know how to speak and listen to one another. And like we've mentioned that before, but just understand that the culture of communication is really important. Will people can listen to each other and give the chance to others to speak, because that is hell interesting. I'm going to tell you something about the story or an example that I read in his book. He talked about one of the toothpaste companies. I just forgot where and what is the name. I can mention that later. So in these toothpaste companies, they had a sort of machine that weighs those toothpaste boxes, and checks if they are full or not. And they had a big system, a big balance to do that. And it makes a lot of mistakes, because sometimes it does not weighs the thing does not go well, so they make mistakes and they make losses. And the thing that one of the employees suggested is to put a sort of air source. So we pump air into the working chain, and if the boxes are empty, they're just going to be thrown out of the chain or out of the working chain. The idea is really interesting. Like, why spending a lot of money on making a machine that weighs those boxes, while we can just put a sort of fan or a air source to pump air and clean out the empty boxes. And this idea was really good, and was going higher and higher in the hierarchy of the company until it was applied, and the employee was praised for that. And the thing is, if those employers did not listen to this employee, they could not find this innovative solution. And in that same factory of the toothpaste, I guess this employee or another one, since there was a really good communication culture, so there was only one tank for the toothpaste, and they had to clean it every now and then. So they needed to stop the working chain, stop the employees, clean the tank, and then get back to work. One of the employees suggested to make another tank, so while we clean one toothpaste tank, we move to the other one, finish the work, and once we can get back, we can back, and vice versa. We can back to the previous one and vice versa. So this was a real interesting thing, and these two strategies of pumping air and making two tanks really helped the factory to make more toothpaste and make more money and make more gains, and just promote their employees. So all these advantages came through a good communication culture inside that company. Fifth thing that the communication or the listening can help is to facilitate conflict resolution. This is super basic. When you have a conflict, if you're not listening well to what is happening, you could not solve that conflict. And if whether you are the judge or a part of the conflict, you should listen well and offer the maximum amount of time to listen. So I can give you just an example of in a court judge. The judge can make his decision in one sentence, but he spends hours and hours, maybe sometimes they spend days listening to the prosecutors, listening to the lawyers, listening to the attorneys. So after I don't know how long, they make their decision. So listening is essential to clarify disagreements, and it helps employees get to the root of a problem, come up with the solutions, and decide the best course of action to take. Sixth thing, it promotes the listening promotes open-mindedness. So you see somebody who's open-minded, he can give you all the time to listen to what you are saying, and he really understanding that. So you find people who have a sort of closed minds, they don't give you the chance to talk. While you're talking, they just prepare what to say next, and you will be bothered and you will not enjoy that. And those people are not open-minded. I hope I can go faster because I'm making too long with this part of the podcast. The last thing is to improve decisions. So at this point, we want to make decisions based on facts and being rational on something. If you do not communicate well and you do not listen well to people, you're going to make decisions based on assumptions. And that is the worst thing that can happen in any sort of situation, whether it's about a family decision, your personal life decision, or a work decision. Attentive listening is really important to make good decisions. And right now, I want to give some tips to be a good listener, since it helps a lot and has many, many effects that can improve your communication and thus improve your life. So, encouraging good listening can help your workforce come together. It promotes innovative thinking and more effective communication. Here are some of the basic tips that you should have when you listen to somebody. First things first is making eye contact. You cannot just turn your eyes away from the person that is speaking to you and giving you advice or giving you a lesson or giving you a lecture. That is just inappropriate, and it does not give you the full effectiveness of a good listening experience. And making appropriate. Second thing is making appropriate facial expressions. So it's all about nodding, tilting your head, smiling, doing saying I see, interesting, saying these things so they can help the speaker understand his or her value, so they can give more and you can learn more. Ask questions. So critical listening involves asking questions to get all the information. But just know that you should not ask questions and interrupt the speaker. And I'm going to talk about interruption right now. So the fourth thing that you should do is never interrupt a person talking. So although it's good to ask questions, but never interrupt. So let the person complete his or her thoughts before responding or asking questions. So the worst thing that you can find in the communication that you can find anywhere is people interrupting each other. So when somebody states or gives an idea, he's not even finishing his example or his idea or his argument, and the other one says, "Okay, I know it. That is the worst thing that can happen in a communication, because that person will hate communicating with you, and when you hate communicating with you, you're going to stop all the thing and the effects of a good listening from happening. Thus, it will just spoil everything." The fifth thing that I can give you is just to paraphrase. So when you talk about something, you need to paraphrase at the end and say, okay, so you said this and that, and then after all you say this. So you're just paraphrasing what the speaker is saying, so he can feel that you're more engaged in his speech and you were following him. So keep these tips. You should keep all these tips in mind, so they will help you become a more effective listener, which is more than half of what it takes to be a really good communicator. Also, another point during a debate, a lot of people confuse and say that you should interrupt the idea of your opponent to win the debate. That is totally wrong. Never interrupt the idea of your opponent, because that would be considered as an aggressive debate or a violent debate, and you will be the only one that loses that. So the tip that comes from here is, let your opponent say whatever he has to say, because there are two ways when he says a lot of things. Whether the things that he is saying are correct, which means that you're going to learn a lot from him and understand more what he's saying, so you can make up your point of view. And the second thing, what he's saying, like the more he says, the more the probability to make mistakes is higher. If he makes mistakes, that would be your killing point, and you can win the debate because he said something wrong that you can prove him wrong, and you can win the debate. And I just want to sum up the things that we did today, so we do not forget and you do not get bored. So the main effects of a good listening experience are building relationships, learning, respect, establishing a good communication culture, and facilitate conflict resolution, promote open-mindedness, and of course improve your decisions. And about the listening tips that I want you to memorize are making eye contact, make appropriate facial expressions, ask questions, do not interrupt, paraphrase, and be good and appropriate during debates. Alright, we come to the conclusion. So from now on, try to share this skill with others, help them learn how to listen actively, and do it as a full communication activity or skill. So give more time and give more attention to your debates, your dinner debates with your family, because just know that a 30 minutes dinner table debate or listening to your father or sibling is really more valuable, and it is worth hours and hours scrolling on social media. So just value these listening experiences and give them the value they deserve. So 2 tips from Dale Carnegie, the writer, the communication coach that I have been talking about in this podcast. He says, so listen is the best way to learn, and people react positively to those who listen well to them. So think a lot about these things. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. These podcasts are available on all the podcast platforms, and it's made absolutely for learning purposes. So help us grow. Share these things. Share this thing. If you know somebody that does not listen well, and if you know someone that listens well, so just tell him that this skill is real interesting and you're a good person and you're a good communicator. And finally, I hope you understood the value and the importance of listening as a communication skill. Thank you. See you next time.